Hey there, and welcome to the Westferry Times podcast. I'm Dee Dee.
And I'm Lumi. Today, we're bringing you a powerful and deeply emotional story written by Allegra Mostin Owen and Marinos Painda and shared with immense care. It's a story that shines a light on the harsh realities of forced marriage in South Asia, told through the eyes of a young girl named Arzu.
Let me introduce first Marinos Painda. She was born in Kabul in 1992 and came to the UK as a refugee at age of 9. She first met Allegra Moston Owen in her local mosque, where Allegra was her art teacher. Marinos was inspired to write about the forced marriage by Afghan women. She thinks this subject needs more attention.
And yeah, it's one of those subjects that feels really complex, like there's so much history, culture, and emotion wrapped up in it.
Totally. And before we dive in, let's just say up front, we're here to explore this topic with care and respect. The goal isn't to point fingers, but to shed the light on the realities and challenges of this issue.
Exactly. And just to clarify something, arranged marriage and forced marriage, not the same thing, folks.
It's not at all. So arranged marriages are like where families help matchmake, right? It's a cultural thing in many South Asian communities, and plenty of people are happy in these marriages.
Right. But then there's forced marriage, where one or both people are coerced into marrying against their will. Is a violation of human rights and can lead to some devastating consequences.
Yeah, we're talking about emotional abuse, physical violence, even the denial of education or independence. It's heartbreaking.
So today we're sharing a story that really captures the weight of this issue. It's about a young girl named Areso, and oh man, her story is written by Allegraga Mosanoen and Marius Pahinda, really hits hard.
Yeah, Marinos, by the way, has an incredible background. She's originally from Kabul, came to the UK as a refugee when she was just 9, and met Allegra through art classes at a local mosque.
That's right. And this story they've written together, it's fictional, but based on real life experiences of so many girls. It's raw, it's real, and yeah, it stays with you.
Absolutely. So, before we get into the story, let's set the stage a bit. Arezu is from Kunduz, Afghanistan, and she's only about 14 years old when her life takes a drastic turn.
All right, let's jump in.
So, Arezu is the eldest of 7 kids, 6 sisters and 1 baby brother. Her family, they're really struggling financially. Her dad, Barialai, is a landless laborer, and her mom, Nasima, is sick.
Right. And even though times are tough, R.S. Sue finds joy in the little things, like painting these beauty spots on her chin in a diamond pattern. It's a tribal tradition. And since she can't wear makeup, it's her way of feeling, beautiful.
Yeah, and she's got this routine, helping with chores, taking care of her younger siblings, making naan and tea every morning. Simple stuff, but it's her life.
But then her father's debt catches up with him. He owes money to this guy named Najibullah Khan, who's a wealthy landowner. And let's just say Najibullah has some ulterior motives for how he wants that debt repaid.
Yeah, he's 45 years old, already married, and looking for a second wife. And because Baryalai can't pay the money back, Najibullah proposes, if you can call it that Arya will marry him instead.
And this isn't some romantic proposal, it's a transaction. Najibullah even offers a year's worth of rice and wheat as part of the deal.
Oh, it's gut-wrenching, right? And Aryasu doesn't even have a say. Her cousin Spogmai breaks the news to her, and her mom, he says, it's the only way. You don't get to choose.
Yeah, and that line really stuck with me. Like, Nasima's not heartless, but she's desperate. She believes this is the only way to save their family.
It's such a heavy moment. Aryasu realizes she has to give up her life as she knows it. She doesn't even get to process it. She just has to accept it.
It's stories like this that make you reflect on how much autonomy we take for granted.
Totally. And there's this ripple effect, right? Like, it's not just about Arisu, it's her whole family's survival at stake.
Right. And honestly, it makes me think about how systemic these issues are. It's not just one bad person or one family, it's poverty, gender inequality, cultural pressures, all of it.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and we just got to the part where Aretsu learns her fate. She's to be married off to a man twice her age to settle her father's debt. Heavy stuff.
it really is. And what struck me about this next part is how life just keeps going. Like even though her world's fallen apart, she's still doing chores, still taking care of her siblings.
Right. And then comes the day when she receives her wedding dress, a gift from her future mother in law.
So Orezu's dress is this deep burgundy color, beautifully embroidered with gold thread. It's clearly expensive and carefully made. And for a moment, she touches it, feels the fabric, and you can tell she's trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah, it's like, on one hand, it's this beautiful dress, but on the other, it's a symbol of everything she's losing: her freedom, her childhood, her dreams.
Is dreams. Exactly. And while she's going through the motions, washing dishes, caring for her siblings, she's quietly saying goodbye to her old life.
And the night before the wedding, her cousin Spogmai tries to prepare her for what you expect on her wedding night.
Can you imagine? 14 years old, and this is what she has to think about. It's heartbreaking.
The wedding day itself is, well, it's not a grand celebration. The nikah, or the marriage contract, is signed at Aresu's house. And when they ask for her consent for 3 times, she can barely get the words out.
Yeah, her mom even has to step in and say yes for her because Isa is just paralyzed.
After that, the men celebrate indoors, while the women are huddled outside in the freezing January air. They're singing traditional songs, but there's this undercurrent of sadness.
One of Arizu's aunts even sings a song about a mother losing her daughter. And meanwhile, Arizu is trying to stay strong, but she's terrified.
And then comes the goodbye. Her siblings are crying, especially her little brother Shafi, who tries to hide under her shawl. It's gut-wrenching.
She leaves in a white Toyota Land Cruiser with Najibullah, her new husband. And you can just picture her silent, tearful, staring out at the mountains as they drive to his home.
You know, this part of the story really got to me. It's not just the physical leaving, it's the emotional and psychological weight of it all.
Totally. And what's even harder is that this isn't just a one-off story. There are thousands of girls like Arezu facing this same reality.
Yeah, and it's a stark reminder of how much work needs to be done, not just in terms of awareness, but also in addressing the root causes like poverty and gender inequality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now we're at the point where she enters this entirely unfamiliar world.
So Arezu arrives at Najibullah's house. And let's just say the reception is mixed. His mother, Zarsenga, is thrilled because she thinks Arezu will bring more sons into the family.
But Nachibolah's first wife, Masuma, not so much. She and her daughters are cold and resentful, and honestly, you can't really blame them. This whole situation is built on inequality.
Right. And for Arezu, it's overwhelming. She's just a kid, thrust into this new life where everyone is sizing her up.
That night, the family has this big celebration, complete with dancing and singing, but Ariso is sitting in her new room, alone and scared.
Yeah, and the room itself is so bare, just pale blue walls and a bed decorated for the wedding night. It's like even the surroundings feel empty and isolating.
And then Najibola joins her. He's dressed in his finest, but for Ariso, it's terrifying. He's this older man with a rough, intimidating demeanor, and she has no choice but to endure it.
This part really hit me. It's not just the physical act of forcing her into this life, it's the complete erasure of her agency.
Totally. And what's worse is the so-called honor rituals that follow.
Oh, right. The next morning, her family and the Jibula's female relatives inspect the bed sheets for proof of her virginity.
I can't even imagine how humiliating that must be. And her own mom is part of this honor committee, averting her eyes instead of offering comfort.
It's this crushing moment where Arezzo realizes she can't rely on anyone, not even her own family.
From here, Aresu's days fall into a grim routine. She alternates between household chores and trying to navigate her relationship with Najibola and Masuma.
And Masuma, oh, she's not making things easy. She flaunts her jewelry, criticizes Arezu's cooking, and even turns her daughters against her.
Yeah, and Najibola isn't any better. If he's upset, whether it's over something trivial or because of his daughter's lies, he takes it out on Aresu with slaps and even a rolling pin.
It's heartbreaking. And as if all that weren't enough, the family starts taunting her because she hasn't fallen pregnant right away. And
Right? They even threaten to send her back to her father's house if she doesn't produce a child. The pressure is relentless.
then 3 months later, Arezu discovers she's pregnant. And you'd think this would bring her some relief, but not quite.
You know, this part of the story really underscores the impossible expectations placed on women in these situations.
Absolutely. It's like no matter what Arezu does, whether it's cooking, cleaning, or even bearing a child, it's never enough.
And the isolation, that's another thing. Even during her pregnancy, she's not allowed out unless she's covered head to toe in a chadri.
Yeah, and when she finally gives birth, it's to a baby girl. And let's just say Najibullah is less than thrilled.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't even look at the baby. He just drives off, leaving Aresu to face the disappointment and scorn of the family alone.
So what's next for Arezu? How does she cope with this harsh new reality?
Yeah.
So basically, Arezu's life after Mina's birth is just as grueling as before. She's constantly criticized, especially by Najibullah's first wife, Masuma, and her daughters.
Yeah, and Najibullah himself, he's angry because Mina is a girl. He doesn't even bother to celebrate or acknowledge the baby's birth.
Right. And the thing is, Arizu has no one to turn to. Her own family is distant, both physically and emotionally. And in Najibullah's home, she's completely isolated.
And the resentment from Masuma's daughters only makes things worse. They start sabotaging her, not like messing up her cleaning or burning food, just to get her into trouble.
Yeah, there's this scene where one of the daughters accuses Arizu of being a bad housekeeper after deliberately ruining her work. It's so petty, but also incredibly cruel.
You know, this part of the story, it really highlights how toxic environments can break someone down piece by piece.
Absolutely. It's not just the physical abuse, it's the constant emotional manipulation and gaslighting.
And it's all tied to this deeply ingrained system of patriarchy. Arisu's value is measured solely by her ability to bear sons, keep house, and stay silent.
Exactly. And honestly, it's exhausting just to listen to. It makes you wonder how Aresu finds the strength to keep going.
But Aresu does keep going, and even in this bleak situation, she holds on to small acts of defiance.
Like when she secretly saves up money gifted to her for Mina. It's not much, but it's a small way for her to assert control over her life.
Yeah, and she hides it from everyone, knowing full well the risk if she's caught.
And then there's her prayer, this quiet hope she holds on to, asking for sons, because she believes that's her only way to gain respect in this household. But let's face it,
It's heartbreaking, though, isn't it? That her prayer isn't for freedom or happiness, but for something that will make her life slightly less unbearable.
this part really struck me. It's such a human response. To find hope in the smallest things, even when the odds are completely stacked against you.
Totally. And it's a reminder of how resilient people can be, even in the face of unimaginable hardship.
Yeah, but it also makes you think, why should resilience even be necessary in cases like this? Why are systems like this allowed to continue?
It's a tough question. And honestly, it's something we all need to think about.
So as the months go by, Aresu settles into this rhythm of survival, but her longing for freedom never fades.
Right, and even though she dreams of a better life, the reality is harsh. She's still facing abuse, isolation, and the constant pressure to bear sons.
And the story ends with her asking herself a haunting question. How long will I have to wait to get my freedom to do what I want to do?
Yeah, and it's a question that echoes far beyond Aristotele's story. For so many girls and women in similar situations, freedom feels like an unattainable dream.
This story, it's not just about Arezu. It's about the thousands, maybe millions of girls around the world who are trapped in systems that deny them basic human rights.
Absolutely. And while it's easy to feel helpless, there are ways to make a difference. Supporting organizations that fight against forced marriage, raising awareness, and challenging cultural norms that perpetuate these practices.
Right. Change starts with conversation. And that's why stories like Arezu's matter. They shine a light on issues that are often hidden in the shadows.
And that's exactly what we hope to do here at Westferry Times. Tell the stories that need to be told.
Thank you for joining us today. If Arezu's story moved you, we encourage you to learn more and get involved in the fight against forced marriage.
And don't forget to check out more stories like this on our website, westferrytimes.com.
This has been the West Ferry Times podcast. Stay curious, stay compassionate, and we'll see you next time.